It's time to talk music, audio gear, and anything else that crosses our minds. I'm Mark.
And I'm Peter.
And welcome to the Hurton Audio Podcast. So, with the Darkness having a bit of a spotlight moment, they have unsurprisingly announced a single and a new album to pre-order, which we are very excited about as long-time Darkness fans.
Yeah, The Darkness, for anybody who doesn't know, is a band, a UK rock band that formed sort of in the late 90s into the early 2000s. They've got a really, really good documentary out as well, which I don't actually know if you can watch anywhere, but it was briefly out. And it sort of came to mainstream success in about 2003 with a string of singles, including the very, very heavily sync-dealed I Believe in a Thing Called Love, which I think was just everywhere at the time. And then, like a lot of good bands, they split up a couple of years after their major success. But the main thing that is interesting with The Darkness is that what they shed light on in the documentary is the fact that they had been going for so long in different like lineups and different capacities, essentially, that by the time they actually broke out and made it, they was all just so exhausted. So then, you know, we have to wait a little while for them to reform. But about 6 years later, in 2012, they do reform, which is something that I, as a massive fan of The Darkness at the time, especially being like a lot younger, and just being like, oh no, that band already like split up, and then you just sort of think, oh, we're never going to get anything else by them. They reformed in 2012 with the album Hotcakes, and I've been a very avid and enthusiastic supporter of The Darkness since, because I just appreciate that they did come back.
Yeah, and a lot of bands don't, to be honest. Now, a lot of the bands, when they announce like a reunion, particularly with the original lineup, and with The Darkness, the original lineup is a bit skew with, because they did reform with the original four members, and then they, after one album, lost the drummer again. And on the second album, they actually lost the bassist and replaced the bassist. So it's sort of funny with The Darkness, because...
But just to clarify that, so going into the second album, they lost the bass player, but when they formed with the original
bass player, yeah. And then on the fourth album, Last of Our Kind, they then go back to... they go to without a drummer. So it's funny, really, the way a lot of bands reform, because it's always messy, and yeah, it just slightly makes it. You know, like when you want to say it's the golden lineup, and you go, it's not.
Well, just to say it is the golden lineup though, because especially solidifying it with Dreams on Toast, the new album that they have just announced, which I'm very excited to get into. They have a song out. If you think about it, with Rufus Taylor, the newer drummer, who's been in the band a long time now, since at least 2017, probably a bit earlier, but on albums from 2017, that would be 4 albums with Rufus Taylor, which would actually equal the rest of their catalogue, which means that technically this is the golden lineup of The Darkness.
Yeah, I know what you mean. If you're using like the Deep Purple sort of way of thinking, and you're looking at, say, like Journey, the amount of years that the band has been together, or what you would consider like the most successful point.
I would argue this is The Darkness's least turbulent, but not the most success in terms of being a transient success, like say a song I believe in a Thing Called Love, where it's like a big massive moment, but it's like trying to carry that momentum can prove to be quite challenging for any band, I think, or even any artist or any property. This is like a consistent, maintained like success that they've been building since, really, I would say in the documentary it's sort of implied Last of Our Kind, but I would have thought from Hotcakes this has been like the goal.
I think Hotcakes, they had a little bit more like label backing and stuff. And then with Last of Our Kind, I think Last of Our Kind was the first album where they were sort of doing it on their own.
Yeah.
So that would make sense in like the run, if you know what I mean. But yeah, the thing with The Darkness, right, is that they're a great like you don't want to say classic rock band, but they're like a modern classic rock. Or I don't want to say heritage rock. Do you know what I mean?
I can't remember what does everybody called like Greta Van Fleet and stuff. What's
it's like
the word?
revival.
Is that what they call it? Revival.
I feel
rock?
like, yeah.
There's you see the playlists on like your designated streaming service that has this tag.
The Darkness is a really hard band to sort of say with one word because they do a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like when you think about some of the songs, like particularly the more extreme songs of each album, they have a lot of range. And I know a lot of people may look at The Darkness and think, oh, they just do like cliched 80s rock songs, but they don't really. You know, like when you think about, like there's some great songs on Hotcakes Hotcakes is a fantastic album.
I do think Hotcakes is severely underrated.
Yeah. And yeah, they're doing all sorts of stuff, and like Easter is Cancelled has some very funny songs on, as does Pinewood Smile. I feel like they've really let the humour come out in the last 3 albums a little bit more. They've always been very funny. Like I say, not quite at the level of Steel Panther, but definitely when it comes to shock rock.
It was Every Inch of You when they reformed, because like Justin Hawkins guested on one of the Steel Panther songs. Struggling to find the name of it now, but I remember that being super cool because I like Steel Panther as well. But yeah, that was the one where I was like, "Ooh, are they going to go all in on like the sort of not parody, but like the humorous lyrics?" But you know, it is one of those things that they say comedy in music can go a long way in terms of making lyrics good anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, Every Inch of You definitely feels like the furthest. It's hard to say that feels further than Southern Trains or Solid Gold, because they are equally silly. But I think Every Inch of You is silly in that sort of more Steel Panther-y aspect than it is like a situational one. Like I feel like a lot of the songs on Pinewood Smile are funny in a situational way, which makes them, I don't know, it makes them more modern feeling.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just really fun. And like Japanese Prisoner of Love, there's just some really like, they're really good songs, but just really, really like over the top and almost like, I don't want to say panto, but like that level of like silliness when you think about It's Love Jim and stuff, like the excessive in the music, just the delivery, like it's very like, I suppose quintessentially British in the way The Darkness put humour into all the songs and stuff.
Because like you say, there's not just the lyrics being funny in some of the songs. Obviously they do just as serious songs as they do like sillier songs, but the music, like there's musical comedy in there in terms of literally like the way that some of the arrangements go and the way that some of the sort of parts are delivered are funny. And that's hard to describe if you don't understand, like, or if you don't associate like humor in music. But I think if you make music, particularly if you've like ever played in a band or like you've been in a room where people are all playing simultaneously, there is like a humor to being deliberately late on something, or like say going to a big finish and
it
something
just doesn't end.
ZZ Top would do, where they would end on either not the right note that everybody would expect, or just not play the final note. Like, you know, they do like a 12-bar outro, and where there's that satisfying last note that says we're done, they'd do the big finish into like it'd go into a crescendo, but there would be no last note.
Yeah.
Which is, there's something very, very funny musically about that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it sort of actually brings us to the new single as well, because it's very jaunty and very like Queen. You can hear, I mean, The Darkness...
Definitely, yeah.
Obviously, The Darkness are very much inspired by Queen, but The Longest Kiss just has a lot of like... it almost reminds you of A Night at the Opera.
Yeah, I would say so. And that's what I'm very excited about. They said, I think they said on their socials, there was a video saying that it's like the most adventurous and like grand recording that they've done, and it definitely sounds like that. You've got, you know, like all the guitar harmonizing and the pianos are all very Queen-esque as well. But like I say, the overall like feel of The Longest Kiss, it is that type of music. I think, you know, it sounds cliche, but it's very British type of like almost like a seaside sound to it, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm struggling to find the words to describe what it is, but Queen do it very well on some of their songs in their earlier side of the catalogue. But it's a type of sound that is sort of non-existent now.
Yeah, you don't really hear a lot of people using those sort of tropes and that sort of way. I think just having like the dash of piano where it's like played in that jaunty like piano ragtime, not quite ragtime, but just like that sort of way. You don't hear that because that's not seen as like something desirable for a lot of like bands to do, particularly rock bands, because it's very like I want to say musical theatre, just because that's where you hear it most.
Again, I don't know if it's cabaret or if it's panto or what it is that it's evocative of, but there's something there. But I also think the reason why, I mean, Queen is a band that is, you know, regularly emulated, but a certain side of Queen will normally be done. The big stacks of harmonies, the big stacks of guitar sort of layering and guitar harmonizing, and sort of the theatrics of it. But people rarely like dip into like, I'm trying to remember what the song's called on A Night at the Opera. Like
Seaside Rendezvous, is it?
Yeah, stuff like Seaside Rendezvous. Yeah, it's stuff that the more, like you say, jaunty and like joyful side of Queen's catalogue they're not necessarily the cool songs by Queen. They're like the songs where you think, well, this is like weird, or, you know, it's a very, very different and very upbeat, but in a way that it doesn't like sell itself, if you know what I mean.
I do think Queen very recently has been put in a box of everybody who's trying to pastiche Queen is only allowed to pastiche We Will Rock You. I feel like people tend to go for the foot stomp clap thing, and they tend to use it at that tempo, and maybe you get a little like riff that's very similar to We Will Rock You. I don't feel like you hear, other than bands like Muse that sort of do the more deep cut sort of abstract side of Queen. I feel like whenever you hear Queen referenced or like sampled in any way, it tends to be in that manner.
Yeah, like lowest common denominator sort of.
Yeah, you don't really hear a lot of people sort of calling back to say like, I want it all or I kind of magic, because it's too complicated and, you know, like too difficult for a lot of people to do. Whereas I think a lot of people go, I want to do like a rock and roll inspired song, and I'm particularly talking about like pop acts. They tend to go, right, let me do something like We Will Rock You, because that is rock music. Do you know what I mean? Like the basic common denominator stuff. I feel like a lot of people, like I would love to see people like do stuff with songs like Give Me the Prize and things like that, but don't, like, Queen's not remembered for those songs for a lot of people.
It's funny with Queen because it's not the early catalogue and it's not the late catalogue. It's like that middle portion, like sort of between A Night at the Opera and The Game. That's what people sort of, your average person will remember, sort of your later side of Greatest Hits Volume 1. Which is quite bizarre because, you know, a lot of bands are remembered for either the debut album or, you know, some of them tend to be remembered for the later side of the catalogue. You know, I think of somebody like David Bowie because he was so prolific in the later side of his catalogue. I remember it being such a massive moment whenever he did anything. People would just, you know, talk about it a lot. And I would also say Daft Punk, you know, it's crazy because to overlook Daft Punk's like earlier releases is bizarre, but when you talk to somebody about Daft Punk, what do they talk about? They talk about Random Access Memories every single time.
Yeah, and if not that, it's Discovery, so it's still not the debut album.
Yeah.
But what's really nice with Dreams on Toast as well is the album cover. Like, me and Peter had a good laugh at the album cover, not because it's like really, you know, like funny, but just because you look at it and go, that's a choice. That's a deliberate choice for the album cover that, if you know the band and you know the people in the band, is a very funny choice to make.
So for those who are unaware, the album cover for Dreams on Toast, which also, what a fantastic album title.
Yeah.
And also a very, very, very British album title as well, which is it's just a very funny, like, sort of statement. The album cover appears to be Frankie and Rufus, who are members of the Darkness, but the bass player and the drum player or the drummer, should I say, on the front cover. And then the cassettes, you can get different members, including a dog, on the front covers.
What's the story with the dog? Do you know what the
I'm
story
assuming.
is?
I'm assuming. I'm not well versed in the way of this dog. I'm assuming it's one of the members of the band.
I keep thinking there's 5 members in the band when I'm looking at the cassette, and then I realise the middle one's a dog.
Again, just funny, isn't it? It's just funny. But what's funny about the cover is we've been listening to a lot of Cheap Trick and looking at I got like a box set, and I noticed on the front cover 2 of them are always often posed quite seriously and quite like marketably. And then when you flip over the back, because I keep thinking it's weird how they're a 4-piece band, but there's only ever 2 of them on the album cover. When you flip it around and look on the back, the other 2 members of the band are doing something like silly or like very unflattering in like almost like in colour. If you turn the CD round, on the front it's in colour and they're on like Harleys, I want to say, and it looks very cool, very like a rock band. And when you flip it over on the back, it says "and" in black and white, and it's the other 2 members of the band,
push bikes,
on like push bikes or tricycles or something, looking very like underwhelming and like
got like braces and glasses on and stuff like that, and the office like wear.
And that's what I thought when you see this cover from The Darkness, because it very much the fact that it's a 4-piece band, yet there's 2 of them. Neither of them being the singer or the guitar player, it just really evokes that energy that Cheap Trick was doing.
They've got the office wear.
Yes, they do have the office wear as well. I feel like that's very Cheap Trick in itself as well. And I'll be very curious to see on like the CD and the vinyl when you turn it round, whether it's a double gatefold or the back, whether it's Justin Hawkins and Dan Hawkins doing something either more grand or something sillier on the back, and see if it is it actually a reference to Cheap Trick, or is it just that we've had that on our minds?
Yeah, it's a very striking cover. I actually really like it. It's one where you look at it and you go, "Ooh, that's interesting." But I think the colour scheme with it just being like the sky blue, black on the other side. Rufus almost looks like you can miss him on the way he's posed because he's deliberately all the way to one side. And I'm just looking forward to seeing what they've got on this album, because all the last few Darkness albums have been really fun listens. And, when you put them on, you remember all the songs. Like every time I put one of the albums on, I'm always surprised by how many of the songs stick with me, even if because I often listen to them on CD. I often forget what a lot of the songs are called, or which songs are on which albums, because I'll just listen to the albums.
Yeah, you just do it as a full
very
package.
Easy to go, which one is Rockin' Space on? And you go, probably Motorheart, because it's a little bit more space themed. But
no, Rockin' Space.
Rockin' Space.
It's all the way on Hotcakes.
Is it?
No, I'm definitely wrong. It's going to be on Last of Our Kinds.
No. Is it on Last of Our Kind?
It's on Last of Our Kind, because that's a bonus track.
I thought it was on.
Which,
on
to be
Motorheart.
honest, if you're doing a competition, I gotta find the deluxe version. I could be wrong.
Oh, this makes sense, yeah, because it is on a deluxe.
It's
version.
on the deluxe part. I'll just type it in.
But it's just one of those things, because they've got like a consistent run, and I really like a consistent run with bands. It's just fun.
Pound Smile. That.
You see, neither of us could remember
I
which
was
song
completely
it was
wrong.
on.
I think I was thinking of Cannonball, because I was thinking of a deluxe track, and I mixed it all up in my head.
I do like Rockin' Space a lot.
Also, though, what I have appreciated, being a Darkness fan, is that there's been deluxe versions of all these albums, and often, more often than not, unless it's like a Christmas edition like Last of Our Kind, they've offered like a pre-order where you get the extra songs, which, as somebody who likes to pre-order and somebody who likes to get the extra songs, I really, really do appreciate that, because it's nice to get like an expanded edition, but sometimes if you pre-order an album, I know there's a big trend at the moment of the day the album comes out, there's an expanded edition released. And you
digital only usually as well.
But then sometimes it's like Charlie XCX's was physical.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I've stupid got a CD come through the post. I don't want to order it again.
Yeah.
But that is the ploy. The ploy is to say, you're a fan, you pre-ordered it, so chances are you want all the songs, you want all the, the best edition. Well, you've pre-ordered the standard, it rolls through the door, and then a better edition is then there. And that's what Taylor Swift was sort of doing. She was just announcing loads of different variants of her album, and then they have like the of the Tortured Poets Department, and
the
then they
demo
have
song one or voice notes versions.
but also like there was I ended up with like the Balter one, and then the Balter was one of the, was it 10 or 15 extra songs that came on the digital expanded edition, like the midnight version? Because that's something that she seems to have done, but that a lot of artists seem to be doing. Because I suppose if you finish all your songs, you might as well stick them all out, because then you get a streaming revenue.
You're
now.
inclined to it in this sort of market. Another thing that's very interesting with the Darkness is they said on their documentary that they wanted to get back to doing arena shows, didn't
Yes.
they? And it looks like they are getting into that. Like they've sort of had a steady rise, and they've built back sort of their fan base, and you've got a lot of new fans for the Darkness, and they're announcing arena shows and stuff, which I think is really nice to see.
I think they've got a very, very good reputation of being like a amazing live band. I mean, we saw them in 2017, and they were very, very good. I'd be interested, I reckon, now with more like, because like you said, it's like a steady growth is what they've been getting.
Yeah.
With the fan base, and I feel like more and more people are like telling a friend and saying, look, if you go to like gigs and you want rock gigs, you got to go see the Darkness, because they're like fantastic.
And I was going to say, with Taylor Swift, obviously,
Yes.
we was almost there.
I know, I was almost into an actual segue.
With Taylor Swift, obviously being filmed with Travis Kelce, singing along to I Believe in a Thing Called Love, because she was a big Darkness fan, and Justin Hawkins actually said that when he went to see Taylor Swift, he had like a little special note from her saying about how much of a fan she was. So obviously that's great for him, but this is really good for the band, because this is like publicity, and you cannot buy this level of publicity.
No, and it was said that because she was lip sync, all she did was her and Travis Kelce sort of like lip synced or sang along to I Believe in a Thing Called Love on an unprompted sort of it was at a sporting event, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just on. They was just on the cameras, weren't they?
Yeah.
They was in the crowd,
and basically they just sang along, and then it sort of went viral, and it spiked I Believe in a Thing Called Love's sales by 70% or nearly 70%. It says, according to Variety, and 60% globally. It says, which is it's just bananas that Taylor Swift has that much influence. But was it that, a lot of people maybe went, oh, I forgot about that song, and, I should check it out?
I also think that song in Taylor Swift's circumstances is very, like, the reason it will go viral is because people are happy for Taylor Swift.
Yes.
That she has found somebody that everybody actually thinks they might actually go well together.
Yeah.
So I think the song has like a double meaning with them.
Do you know, I never
it.
even thought of that.
Like, to a lot of people looking at Taylor Swift, it's like the song is like a perfect sort of song to put on, like narratively, for them to be seen in public on the TVs singing along to it. It sort of like confirms how happy they are in their relationship. Do you know what I mean? With the narrative of the song. It wouldn't work if it was Mr. Brightside. It wouldn't have
had the
same double meaning. You wouldn't be able to look and go, oh, that's interesting, or fans wouldn't be able to gush over it. Do you know what I mean? Like, as a special moment. If it was like Wonderwall, it wouldn't make sense.
Yes, so you're saying, like, even if you had no idea, say you're
that's my take on it.
I was going to say you're Gen Z and you completely missed the Darkness the first time around because you're too young. So you have no real context of the original release run of that song. And I do think the sort of older you get, the more you realise how impactful it is if you was actually there for certain moments. Because you think when you look back, you're not seeing the events as they happened, you're seeing the events as they're retold to you. Like being like a Queen fan who wasn't alive when Queen was doing their run. My recollection of Queen's history will never be the same as somebody who was there, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Because you've got all this context that you don't actually have, and things aren't written down one-to-one, really. So with the Darkness, if you missed them the first time around, you had no idea who they were, or you had no recollection of that song, like you say, and you saw that video of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce singing that, you would, like you say, you would latch onto the message more than the actual song. And like you say, that message does make a lot of sense for them. And I never actually thought, being a Darkness fan, I didn't actually think of reading between the lines there.
Well, I think that's partly why, because if you was to replace the song, I don't think it would have as much impact as like a viral clipped thing.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot more sense. Taylor Swift's personal life, everybody wants to know, and then that song is like a celebration of that relationship. It all amounts to a narrative. And in social media terms,
answers the question of are they happy? It's like, well, I doubt they would be singing along to a song with such an overtly obvious sort of meaning without actually being happy is your sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I would say. That, you know, maybe that's not the truth, maybe that's not why it went viral, but that is what I think of when I look at it.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously that's big boost in the Darkness's publicity, and then out of nowhere, maybe like 2 weeks later, we have an announcement of a new album and stuff. So, and tour. So I think they've pounced. Maybe they was going to announce it a little bit later. Maybe they had it already, and they went,
now's a better time than any. That's what I would have thought. I would have thought that they would have looked, gone, we're having a bit of a moment. Let's do the announcements now. Let's announce the tour and announce an album, get something out to try and capitalize on that momentum, which is very smart. I think it's just great. It's great to see the Darkness doing well, because I feel like when they reformed, I wouldn't have said that they did. You know, it's not that they didn't do well, but, you know, like, I suppose they go over this in their little documentary. It's like to get back to where they were, because they were so unbelievably successful. Yeah,
because they won like 3 VMAs, didn't they? And they had and the Brits and all sorts. It might be the Brits.
I think you're thinking of the Brits.
Where he stood on the tower.
Yeah, but you know, they were so unimaginably like successful on that first run of them first 2 albums. It must have felt really, really difficult coming back and then having to rebuild all of that momentum. Because, you know, I suppose, like it says in the documentary, they sort of was building that momentum outside of like really the mainstream or any sort of like viewpoint, because they'd sort of just gone, we're going to stop trying to pretend we're something we're not, and we're going to make the music we want to make. And then they sort of did like a lot of residencies in like a certain, I can't remember the venue that they did the residency in. So there was like building their own show, and they was thinking that it's sustainable for us, but you know, this is probably for the most part like what we're going to do. And then it just sort of exploded. But I do think I maintain the Darkness are one of the best examples of a band that we sort of need to carry the rock flag, and a band that, you know, we need to see more bands like this, I feel like.
Yeah. Do you mean like musically, or just like the full package? Do you mean like in the way that they act, the way that they look, just everything?
I just think like for rock, stereotypical rock at the moment is sort of in this non-existent place. Where
I know what you mean. I think what you're saying is like rock has become so, not even like cliched, but I think rock has become so unfun.
It's passive. It's like the Darkness are saying, we're pompous, we're stars. The music is like, you know, grand. It's very, very theatrical, and it's like the full show, the full spectacle. And a lot of rock music now is very, you know, it's very subdued. It's very, I'll play if you want to listen, or I don't think I deserve to be here. Whereas, you know, what I think when you think about the Darkness, especially on the first 2 albums, it was like, we are the stars and you have come to see us because we're massive. You know, and I know that energy is less popular now, but rock music is not super compatible with like the egoless thing in all forms. Do you know what I mean? It's like it can work, but there's this big void where this sort of rock star thing is still like not a thing really in music.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And it's like the delivery of the package more so than the package itself. But I also think like when it comes to the music, a lot of bands are trying to be very deadly serious. And I think it's not even the humour, it's more like in the way the songs are. A lot of bands don't want to write stereotypical good songs. They want to write like, oh, well, we're really deep and you would have never come up with this song. So here's this song. And like I say, a lot of songs are very serious, and there's a big push with like the post genre stuff. And the indie / alternative stuff. Whereas rock, as you like AC/DC type rock.
Like rock is like fun. It's fun and it's exciting.
But it's also
a show.
It's also like it feels pretty non-existent in the public perception. Like
Yeah.
for new bands, you have a band here and there, but like new rock bands are like trying to clone the Arctic Monkeys. Do you know what I mean? They're not trying to
it's
clone.
a different genre entirely
Yeah.
to what this is. Like that's sort of what I'm trying to say. You know, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be there, but I'm saying like they're operating in the field of like the more, I don't know, the counterculture rock and that mainstream rock that did exist basically from the 50s all the way up till like the 90s. That mainstream rock is now almost non-existent, and we are just left with like the counterculture rock.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
That's sort of what I'm saying.
And
So
any
it's not
bands
to say
that are doing like the rock, they just don't get the publicity or anything.
Yeah, that's sort of what I'm getting at. And so it's a rather like nuanced like argument, because it's like, not to say that there's no guitar music, but the type of guitar music is different. It's the alternative side of rock, and the more, we're not doing like the stereotypical thing. And what I'm saying is that stereotypical rock is just non-existent, and everybody likes it, because otherwise nobody would go out and stream I Believe in the Thing Called Love.
Yeah.
When they hear it once. But I feel like The Darkness is a band that always comes up. Whenever it comes up on Beat or Repeat on Radio 1, which it has done a couple of times, people love it. And it's like one of those things where it's just good fun. And I think music does need to be fun.
Yeah. And on that note, are you going to check out The Darkness's album? Have you ever heard of The Darkness? Let us know in the polls and the comments below. And thanks for listening, everybody.